Hello everybody, it's Josie here. I'm going to be doing my wrap up for May part 2. I think I'm going to be doing 3 wrap ups because there's some books that I want to talk about separately, like a chunk of books as well. So this is going to be part 2 of my wrap up. I've got these books here to talk about. So I'll start, 2 of these books I've actually got separate reviews on, so I won't spend too much time talking about them here. If you want to know more kind of in-depth on both of them, you can go to those videos. But the 2 I've got is Sadie by Courtney Summers and A Danger to Herself and Others by Elisa Schimmel. Am I saying that correctly? So let's start with Sadie. Sadie is basically a thriller. This is a book that I think just about everybody's read up until this point, but not me. And it keeps getting recommended. People keep saying it's really good. And I've read it and I agree. It is good. I really enjoyed myself reading it. So the basic premise of this book is that you have Sadie who goes missing. But previously to that, her younger sister was murdered. So you kind of have these 2 mysteries really going on. You have the death of her sister, and then you have the disappearance of Sadie. And there's also a really cool podcast element to this book. And I know a lot of people, I couldn't get hold of the audio. I like audiobooks, but I prefer reading physical books, and I still enjoyed reading the podcast element. I did read another book not that long ago called 6 Stories, which was also a podcast, which I really liked as well. And I think if you like Sadie, you'd probably like 6 Stories as well. But I gave this 4 stars. Like I said, I'll talk more in depth about it in the video that I've done just on this book, but overall great thriller, recommend it, really enjoyed it. Yeah, finished it in 1 day, so it's a good one. The next one I've got here, again, that I've got a separate video on, is A Danger to Herself and Others. This is a really interesting book. So again, I thought this was going to be more of a thriller than it actually was, but it's such an interesting, okay, I'm not going to give too much away of the story, but basically you've got your protagonist who finds herself in a mental hospital after an incident that happened with her best friend in their dorm room. They've gone off to, these are teenagers, it's a YA book, they've gone off to kind of Sample University in California for the summer, and her best friend are rooming together, and something happens to her best friend. She ends up in the hospital, and your protagonist ends up in a hospital, and she's being she's being assessed by a psychiatrist. This again, I really recommend this. 4, maybe even 4.5 stars on this one, but I'll go more in depth and probably slightly spoilery in the video that I did on the separate video. Then the next book I've got here is this one, Done Dirt Cheap. So this is by, who's this by? Sarah Nicole Lemon. So this book intrigued me because I'm a huge Sons of Anarchy fan. And there was kind of Sons of Anarchy, biker gang elements to this book. So you've got 2 girls, I'm trying to remind myself what their names are, Tourmaline and Virginia. So Tourmaline is the daughter of the president of the biker club, gang, whatever you want to call it. Her father runs that. And then you've got Virginia, who, and I have to say, okay, I'm going to stop myself here. With the synopsis of this book, I actually thought it was going to be something different. So in the synopsis, it basically says Virginia's mother has kind of lent her out to a lawyer, and he asks for her help in investigating this biker gang. And her strategy for doing that is to get close to Tourmaline, because they're both sort of teenage girls. They're like 18 at the time, or Virginia might be a bit older, but Tourmaline I think is 17 or 18. So from reading the synopsis, I initially thought that she was it was more of the law that was trying to bring down the biker gang, and it's not really that. Virginia's situation is a lot more messed up than that. This lawyer that she works for, he's not a good guy. And I really loved the complexity of the story. I really loved the complexity of the relationship between Tourmaline and Virginia. Again, you've got that female friendship element, and you've got quite a messed up situation. You know, there's not a lot of, I'm going to say not a lot of hope, but they're in quite dark circumstances, both of them. It's It's interesting again in terms of the truths we tell, the lies we tell, the things we try to hide about ourselves, who we really are. The one thing that I would say about this is the writing. I'm not sure how much I enjoyed the writing, and I can't remember who it was, but someone said that they started this and kept putting it down because they just couldn't get into it. And I get that. The writing is very beautiful in places, but then sometimes weirdly I got a bit confused and I had to kind of go back a little bit. And while I really enjoyed this, probably 3.5 stars on this one, I would say that the writing, I don't know what I can't even explain it properly, but the writing was a little bit strange. The actual premise of the story I really enjoyed. Like I said, I liked these two kind of characters, these two female characters kind of grappling with their own demons, each one of them really, and kind of where you come from and your circumstances, and the expectations that are put on you, and also that element of being a woman in those circumstances, that sort of powerless feeling, particularly when it pertains to Tourmaline being the daughter of kind of the leader of this biker gang. And within biker gangs, women are not really, they don't really enjoy a high status generally, except maybe if you're the wife of the kind of the president of the club. But even then, it's a difficult situation. And for Tourmaline as well, her mom, and this is not a spoiler because it's on the back of the book, she did something, and there was testimony that she gave to actually put her mother away in jail. So it starts off where she actually goes to visit her mother, so she's grappling with that as well. She's grappling with guilt. I think there's a lot of emotion in it. I'm just not entirely sure if it was written in the best way. I don't really know how to explain that element of it. It's just something that didn't sit 100% correctly with me. But as a story itself and the idea, I did enjoy it. So 3.5 stars on that one. Then the next one is Keeping the Moon. This is also about female friendship. So you've got your protagonist. She's 15, I think. Yeah. And her name is Collie. And she's kind of never really fit in. She used to be very fat. And her mom used to move them around from town to town, so they used to travel all the time and move around all the time. And eventually her mother settled in one place, and her mother went on this massive kind of weight loss kick, fitness kick, and is now quite famous and sort of on TV, sort of flogging her own fitness and diet program, like a program and fitness stuff and accessories and all sorts of things. And so her mom lost a whole lot of weight, so did she. But she still doesn't really fit in, and she's kind of got that narrative and those demons in the back of her head. And I think if anybody, and I really related to that as well because I was really fat at school. I have lost a lot of weight since, and you don't ever lose that narrative in your head. You don't ever forget those insults. So I really kind of connected with Collie on that level. The premise, the main sort of driver of the story is that she goes to visit her aunt in, I don't even know where it is, in North Carolina. And it's again, this little town. And it kind of talks about the people she discovers there, discovering herself, her relationship with her aunt. The people in this town think her aunt is very weird. Again, coming to terms with yourself and who you are and finding your own strength and your own inner voice. And there's a wonderful element of female friendship in this as well. She's never really had any female friends, and she finds these two girls in this town that she makes friends with. And it's just a really pretty little story. There's a tiny hint of romance in it that I wasn't keen on, but other than that, just the idea of finding yourself, finding girlfriends who support you, and just having the courage to be who you are. Very, very lovely story. Again, 3.5 stars on that one. Then you've got Eileen. So this is by, oh God, I'm gonna murder this, Atessa Moshfegh. I really murdered that. So Atessa wrote another book. This one was, this was Man Booker Prize nominated in 2016, and she's written a more recent book called My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which I also have, which actually I might read fairly soon, just because I want to read one of her other books after reading this one. So spoiler, I enjoyed it. So Eileen is a very quirky, interesting book. So our protagonist, Eileen, works in a boys' kind of detention prison facility. And she also cares for her father, who is an alcoholic. Her mother passed away a few years before, and she's been caring for her very alcoholic, quite abusive father. He's pretty horrible. Eileen is she's kind of really described as quite dowdy. She wears her mother's clothing, her dead mother's clothing. She has these kind of fantasies about one of the guards at the prison, but she's never had any sort of experience or any boyfriend or anything. She's in her early 20s, and she's just kind of described as this kind of old before her time spinster, very kind of dowdy, depressed. So most of the book, and it's fascinating, you learn about her life, and it's a few days up until Christmas. So it starts with, okay, something happened, and then these are the days leading up to what's going to happen on Christmas Day. So she's kind of chugging along in quite a morose, kind of depressed state, which I actually found really fascinating to read about. And I did sort of unfortunately see myself in some of her characteristics, which is quite scary. And then she meets this woman, I think her name is Rebecca. Yeah, Rebecca, who starts as a psychiatrist in the boys' prison. And they strike up a bit of a friendship. And the thing is, Eileen is instantly sort of fascinated or enthralled by Rebecca because she thinks she's beautiful, glamorous, all of the things that Eileen isn't. And then something happens. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you what happens, which leads up to what eventually happens on Christmas Day. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was interesting. I like Otessa's kind of writing style. That's why I'm also going to read My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I gave this 4 stars. I think the only thing I would say is, and this has been happening to me a lot recently, is that I liked 2/3 of the way the book was amazing. Like when I started it, probably the first third I'm going, oh my God, this is a 5-star read. It's really good. And then the very end kind of let me down a little bit. And I'm finding that a lot. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm finding that endings of books I'm either not liking or I feel like they're letting me down somehow. That's the only thing I would say. But I do still recommend this. It's very fascinating, kind of into psyche, into the darkness of psyche, into what we'll do and how we perceive ourselves. And again, that sort of element of that friendship that isn't entirely healthy. So yeah, I enjoyed this. Would definitely recommend it, and I'm looking forward to reading her other book. And the next one I've got here is Rose of No Man's Land, which is by one of my favorite authors, Michelle Thier. And she is very sort of well known for writing 1990s lesbian books, and they're great. They're kind of always center around the 90s, grunge, sex, drugs and alcohol, queer women, and I love them. This one is, I would say, a slight departure. So again, we're in the 90s in the States, but we're following we're following a teenage girl, 2 teenage girls effectively, a teenage girl, and then she meets another one. So she is from our main protagonist, Trisha. She's 14, yeah. So she is from quite a poor family. Her father's not around. Her mother has a boyfriend who is pretty skeezy. So a lot of the book, you're kind of following her life in a narrative. She goes off and she wants to earn some money. She has a sister. I love her sister. Her sister's trying to get on The Real World, MTV's Real World program. So if you're around in the 90s, you'll remember MTV had a program called The Real World, a bit like Big Brother, where they put a whole bunch of people in apartments in different cities in the States and film them. So her sister's kind of filming this audition video, which actually I really enjoyed that element of the book. And she's kind of filming her family, and she's going, God, if this doesn't get me on The Real World, I don't know what will. And she finds her sister very kind of depressing and horrible. And she basically tries to get her out the house and says, okay, we're going to dress you up, because her sister is not really known for dressing up or putting on makeup or being very feminine or girly. She dresses her up in her clothes because the sister is completely different to Trisha, and sends her off to go get a job at quite a fashionable kind of teen boutique in the mall. That doesn't go so well, but while she's at the mall, she meets Rose, who I suppose is the title character. And her and Rose go on this kind of crazy adventure together. And then you'll see where Rose of No Man's Land comes in. I still enjoyed this. Like I said, it felt was a little bit different from kind of Michelle's other books that I've read, but I found it was darkly amusing, and also very well written, as all of her books are. There's an aspect of kind of sexuality and queerness in here as well, which I liked. And overall, I gave this 4 stars. It's good. It's not the best Michelle T book that I've read, but I still really enjoyed this one. And yeah, it's quirky and weird and a little bit dark and quite fun. And then the last one that I'm going to talk about is this book over here called Like Mandarin. This by Kirsten Hubbard. This book I picked up by chance at a charity shop. I just thought it sounded vaguely interesting, and I'm so glad I did, because I really, really, really enjoyed this book. So you've got the main character, I'm just trying to remember, her name is Grace, and she's 14 as well, and she lives kind of near the Badlands with her kind of her family. She's very introverted. She doesn't have a lot of friends. And then she meets this girl whose name is Mandarin. Well, no, she doesn't really. Okay, let me go back. So she doesn't have a lot of friends. She goes to the local high school, and Mandarin has always been in the local high school. So there is a bit in the beginning of the book where Grace used to compete in beauty pageants as a child, which I detest child beauty pageants. But that's interesting. So she competes, her mother kind of makes her compete in these child beauty pageants. It goes wrong, one of the pageants. And she's kind of disgraced a bit. And while she's being disgraced, I think at like 7 years old, she sees Mandarin for the first time. And then they kind of grow up. She's 14 now. And Mandarin is around in this school, small town, small high school. Lots of rumors about people. And she always sees Mandarin as this incredibly glamorous, beautiful girl, kind of all of the things that she wants to be: confident. People are kind of scaredly respectful of Mandarin in that way, although there are lots of rumors about her and about what she gets up to. And kind of Grace is really fascinated with her. And then you've got the other aspect of her home life with her mother and her sister. And her mother has actually kind of replaced Grace with her sister in terms of the sister now does the beauty pageants. So there's another element of that which I really loved, is that dynamic, and that family and sister dynamic and mother-daughter dynamic as well. But then you have that dynamic with Mandarin where she kind of admires her, and then they become friends. And then you kind of see what happens. And again, you've got this, what we perceive people to be, who they really are, you know, how you can be drawn into someone's orbit, how things can be, not be what they seem, how complicated friendships can be, and how complex people can be. And I just loved this. There's an element of sort of slut shaming in this as well, kind of slightly feminist in the terms of, you know, why should you be what everybody else wants you to be? Again, this version of the good girl, the bad girl, all of that. I just think it is a fantastic, fantastic read. This is 4.5, maybe even 5 stars for me. I really, really enjoyed this book. So that's my lot for now. Thank you for listening to me. Let me know what you think of any of these books, if you've read them, any recommendations based on those that you think I might like, and I will talk to you all again very soon. Bye-bye.